Throughout its history, America has always questioned people on having dual loyalties. Jews to Israel, Chinese to China, etc., etc. But as the nation was founded and began to attract the masses seeking the American dream, people became skeptical of the Irish, Italians, Germans, and Poles because they were Catholic. They were suspected to have a dual allegiance to the Vatican and would undermine the predominantly Protestant United States of America in some perplexing popish plot. Understandable. In the 1800s, the Vatican was not confined to a few blocks in the middle of Rome, but encompassed a large portion of Middle Italy from Rome to Romana. The Pope was also not just a religious figurehead, but a head of state, a theocratic monarch who held considerable sway over European politics. Following the 1848 revolutions, which saw liberal uprisings against monarchies across Europe and calls for reform both political and social, the Pope had lost almost all his governed territory to the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, and efforts made by Giuseppe Garibaldi to unify the divided Italy. Pope Pius IX, however, had the protection of France and managed to hold on to Rome. Well, how does this fit into U.S. history? Naturally, the United States was unfavorably disposed to the Papal States on the fact of it, A, being a monarchy, B, being opposed to many of the core tenets of the United States, such as the freedom of religion and freedom of speech, and C, the U.S. was in favor of the revolutions across Europe, and finally, D, because they were Catholic. The United States was also one of the first nations to recognize the newly formed Italy. Background established, now we can get to the question. Did Pope Pius IX recognize the Confederacy? Let's set the scene. The year is 1863, the bloodiest year of the war, with battles like Gettysburg and Chickamauga inflicting more American casualties in the span of a few days than those that would die in the jungles of Vietnam a century later. Jefferson Davis, president of the rebel Confederate States of America, has the same difficult task as President Lincoln, trying to hold his nation together. Davis also had the special task of finding some foreign nation to recognize the sovereignty of the CSA, but it was to no avail. Efforts were made to convince both Queen Victoria and Emperor Napoleon III to support the Confederacy, even using cotton as a bargaining chip to bring the foreign sovereigns to the table. But neither wanted to anger the United States, who had larger numbers and equipment. However, amidst the chaos of the war, Davis would catch wind of a letter sent from the Pope to the archbishops of New York and New Orleans, praying that peace would be restored. Davis would take this as an opportunity to write the Honorable Pontiff. Richmond, September 23, 1863. Very Venerable Sovereign Pontiff, the letters which you have written to the clergy of New Orleans and New York have been communicated to me, and I have read with emotion the deep grief therein expressed for the ruin and devastation caused by the war which is now being waged by the United States against the states and people which have selected me as their president, and your orders to your clergy to exhort the people to peace and charity. I am deeply sensible of the Christian charity which has impelled you to this reiterated appeal to the clergy. It is for this reason that I feel my duty to express personally, and in the name of the Confederate States, our gratitude for such sentiments of Christian good feeling and love, and to assure your holiness that the people, threatened, even on their own hearths, with the most cruel oppression and terrible carnage, is desirous now, as it always has been, to see the end of this impious war, that we have ever addressed prayers to heaven for the issue which your holiness now desires, that we desire none of our enemies' possessions, but we fight merely to resist the devastation of our country and the shedding of our best blood, and to force them to let us live in peace under the protection of our own institutions, and under our laws, which not only ensure to everyone the enjoyment of his temporal rights, but also free to exercise his religion. I pray your holiness to accept, on part of myself and the people of the Confederate States, our sincere thanks for your effort in favor of peace. May the Lord preserve the days of your holiness and keep you under his divine protection. Jefferson Davis. Pio IX responded to this letter as follows. Illustrious and Honorable President, salutations. We have just received with all suitable welcome the persons sent by you to place in our hands your letter, dated 23rd of September last. Not slight was the pleasure we experienced when we learned from these persons and the letter with what feelings of joy and gratitude you were animated, illustrious and honorable President, as soon as you were informed of our letters to our venerable brother John, Archbishop of New York, and John, Archbishop of New Orleans, dated the 18th of October last year, and in which we have all our strength excited and exhorted those honorable brothers that, in their episcopal piety and solicitude, they should endeavor, with the most ardent zeal and in our name, to bring about an end to the fatal civil war which has broken out in those countries, in order that the American people may obtain peace and concord and dwell charitably together. It is particularly agreeable to us to see that you, illustrious and honorable President, and your people are animated with the same desires of peace and tranquility which we have in our letters inculcated upon our venerable brothers. May it please God at the same time to make the other peoples of America and their rulers, reflecting seriously how terrible is civil war and what calamities it engenders, listen to the inspiration of a calmer spirit and adopt resolutely the part of peace. As for us, we shall not cease to offer up the most fervent prayers to God Almighty, that He may pour out upon the people of America the spirit of peace and charity, and that He will stop the great evils which afflict them. We at the same time beseech the God of pity to shed upon you the light of His grace and attach you to us by a perfect friendship. Given at Rome, at St. Peter's, the 3rd of December, 1863. Signed, Pius IX. Upon receiving the aforementioned papal letter, many in the South took it as a recognition of their struggle, as a sign of their legitimacy by recognizing Jefferson Davis as a president, with Robert E. Lee describing him as the only sovereign in Europe to recognize our poor Confederacy, and was said to have a picture of him in his house, even though he was Episcopalian. Though not a formal recognition, damage was already done to the declining U.S.-Vatican relations. Following the end of the war, the Pope would remember Jefferson Davis as he sat imprisoned at Fort Monroe for treason, and would send him a picture of himself with the following passage from Matthew. "Come to me, all ye who labor and are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest, saith the Lord." And as these letters would pass on into the realm of history, a legend would be formed around them, one in which the Pope was said to have sent a handmade crown of thorns to the imprisoned Davis, though in reality it was made by his wife. However, both the letters and crown are housed in the Museum of New Orleans, forever binding them as unlikely associates in the annals of American history.